Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mihai. Unfortunately, due to unexpected problems, I couldn't be here today. But I wanted to share a few thoughts on how artificial intelligence is starting to take over the world. Machines are getting smarter, faster, more creative, and soon we will.
Good afternoon. I am Mihai. And what you just saw wasn't me. That was a deepfake, created in less than 2 hours with tools any of you could use. It was trained on my voice, my gestures, my face. For some of you, it might feel real, it might seem real, but it isn't. It's just a reflection. And the tiny moment of confusion you just felt, that moment where you weren't sure what's happening, what's real or what's fake, that's the world we're walking in today. A world where the line between real and artificial grows thinner and thinner every day. In fact, the more we try to teach machines how to think, the more we must remember to stay human in a world that's increasingly artificially intelligent. And that's the reason why I'm here today. I've been working in AI for many years, and I want to share some ideas on how we can stay real in front of artificial intelligence. But for the story to make sense, we have to take a few steps back to childhood. When I was a kid, I was obsessed with Legos. It was my way of creating new things, and every day was the start of a new exploration. My dream back then was to become an architect, but not because I loved buildings, but because I loved simplicity and precision. The way a single straight line could create structure, and the way multiple random dots, once connected, painted a full picture and revealed meaning. And I would spend hours sketching floor plans, drawing buildings, building small Lego towns with tiny houses I imagined I'd live in, and small bridges I imagined I'd cross. And they existed for a day, only to be recycled the next morning into a new reality. And without realizing it, I was mirroring life. I was creating miniature reflections of a world I didn't yet understand. Similarly, that's what AI does too. It mirrors us, learns from us, and it creates fake versions of reality that are strangely quite good. But while my Lego creations were built from imagination, the worlds of AI are built from data. Your data, and every image you upload, every story you write, become new Lego bricks in this new AI world. And it's interesting how many lines you can draw between something as playful as Legos and something as not necessarily playful as artificial intelligence. Another activity that has many touch points with how machines learn is climbing mountains. Last year, I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro in Africa. On the summit day, we started at 5,000 meters at midnight in complete darkness. The air was thin, was cold, and all I could see was the path in front of me and the small circle of light coming from my headlamp, walking one slow step at a time. And every now and then, because I was impatient to reach the summit, I would look up, and all I could see were some tiny white dots in the distance. It was very hard for me to understand if those white dots were stars or other people climbing in front of us. That's exactly how AI learns too. You throw it on this dark mountain. You give it time, you give it a goal, and it is able to gradually find an optimal path to reach the goal. But here's the thing. AI lives in a simulation. It can try and fail thousands of times. The simulation can restart as often as needed. There's almost no risk. But with humans, one wrong step outside of the safety zone, and our simulation ends. It's also what makes us human. We are aware of risks, we measure them, and we decide that some mountains in life are worth climbing. But before we climbed the summit, we had to follow a process. We had to spend 5 days at increasingly higher altitudes to let our bodies adapt to the lack of oxygen. If you skipped the process and dropped us directly on the peak, we would immediately feel sick. Similarly, that's how AI behaves too. You can't just create technology, throw it in the wild and say, hey, AI, please figure it out. It just doesn't work. You need structure, a process, time to let the system adapt, and it will eventually reach its goal. But if you look at climbing the mountain from a strictly mathematical point of view, climbing Mount Kilimanjaro is objectively stupid. It's inefficient and redundant. You only go up to come back down in the same position. But when we climb mountains, we don't climb them because it's efficient. We just climb mountains because we want. We want to prove to ourselves that we can. We want to experience the journey. And when we reach the top, we like it because we feel alive. Well, AI has nothing like that. Of course, it can forecast the weather, it can predict the optimal path to the peak, but it has no wants, it has no wishes. It may even circle the mountain forever, perfectly optimized, but perfectly meaningless. Because in the absence of a goal, reaching the summit means nothing. That's why, before I use AI, I ask myself, what am I using AI for? What's the mountain I'm trying to climb? And it turns out that asking the right questions is an extremely valuable skill that I only learned, let's say, quite late in life. A few years ago, when I was building my company, AI Flow. The goal was simple. We were building technology and AI for other people and other companies to build their products without requiring a PhD in computer science. If you want, we were building the small AI Lego bricks for other people to build their own creations. And everything worked perfectly. Technology went great. We built AIs. And just like engineers do, we optimized everything and worked with our heads down for a very long period of time. Technology was functioning perfectly. The product, though, failed. Not because the AI wasn't performing, but because we made a very fundamental business mistake. We forgot to talk to our users. We forgot to ask them, hey, what do you need? We forgot to ask ourselves, why are we building this? We assumed what people needed, and we were wrong. And that's the thing. Technology is amazing. But without people like you and me to give it direction, it might become a reflection of a reality no one needs. It's like building that small house no one lives in, or building that small bridge no one crosses. So eventually, after 1 year of building things because we thought they are cool, we lifted our heads and looked around us and started helping other people build and refine their own products. We switched from a product company to a consulting company, and everything started to work. And after all those experiences, playing with Legos as a kid, building an AI startup, and climbing mountains, I kept asking myself a different question. Not what is intelligence, but what makes us human in front of artificial intelligence. And it's not logic or memory. Machines have plenty of that. Instead, it's our desire to ask questions, to connect the dots, to feel something real. Because look, AI can predict patterns, but it's only up to us to find meaning in those patterns. AI can, and I'm sure most of you have seen that, generate very nice images of, let's say, sunsets. But it's up to us to experience sunsets with our friends on mountains. And we often look at this AI as something bad, coming after our jobs, our intelligence, maybe even our freedom. Well, if you look at the fundamentals, artificial intelligence, as we know it today, started a few decades ago, when scientists were trying to simulate how the human brain works, with tiny artificial neurons adapting to new data. And on paper, simple. Numbers, linear algebra, and statistics. Very simple. But in reality, it's becoming a mirror, a reflection of how we behave, how we talk to each other, the decisions we make. And in technology, we have this saying, garbage in, garbage out. This is exactly how this reflection functions. You give AI art, it'll give you back something beautiful. You give AI chaos, it can only give you back confusion. And that's the paradox. AI might be our greatest creation, but also our sharpest mirror. A mirror that knows more and more about ourselves every day. So where does this lead us? Simple. This leads to singularity. And now you're all like, yes, Mihai, we all know what singularity is, like as if it's a super simple thing. A few years ago, I also didn't know what singularity was when I first heard it, so I looked it up online. And singularity is this moment in time when artificial intelligence surpasses human intelligence. Should this scare us? Well, if you look at how AI learns today, it learns from all the data on the planet. Let's just call it the internet for simplicity. There'll come one day when every machine will know everything that can be known, and no machine will be smarter than another. And the superintelligence of machines will be just like this circle, the carpet I'm staying on right now, a massive one having all human knowledge. But just like any other circle, it has an edge. And AI can move anywhere inside the circle. It can recombine ideas in millions of ways. It can connect dots we never thought to connect. But the more it's combining, the more it's generating, it reaches the edge and it bounces back. That's the thing. AI cannot leave this circle. It can only remix what's inside. So then what do? How do we escape this singularity? Well, by being ourselves, by being authentic, and by having the courage to every now and then step out of the circle. Because here, outside of the circle of what's known, this is where humans create. Every invention started here, every startup idea, every piece of art that made you say, I've never seen anything like that before, didn't come from recombining what existed. It came from imagining what didn't. So no, singularity doesn't scare me. What scares me, though, is a much simpler thing. Us getting too caught up in our day-to-day lives that we forget that there is more than this circle. And we should, in fact, step out of it more often. But let's go back to business for a second. When the company didn't work initially, I had to rebuild it from the ground up. And in the process of doing so, I was reminded of something simple and profound. That every form of intelligence, real or artificial, is only as strong as its foundations. In architecture, or in playing with Legos, weak foundations will collapse. In sports, or in climbing mountains, weak fundamentals will break under pressure. And the same goes with our thinking. Unclear reasoning can only lead to confusion. And we've been so caught up in this day-to-day race of making AI better and better for decades now that we often forget to check our fundamentals. We forget that sometimes we have to sit down with the problem for hours until we figure it out on our own without over-relying on AI. We forget the power of curiosity, the power of asking the right questions. Questions like, how does the future look like? And how do we build it? When I was a kid, I kept asking myself those questions. Back then, I was playing with Legos to imagine reality. Each brick was a choice, and every structure was a reflection of how I imagined this future would look like. Nowadays, our bricks are algorithms and data. And just like back in childhood, we get to decide what we build. We can keep building illusions, like deepfakes, misinformation, endless mirrors. Or we can build something real, like projects that inspire us, ideas that free us, or tools that create this future. And it's our responsibility to ask the right questions, pick the pieces, and start building. So as we stand at the edge of this AI-driven future, here's 3 things I would do to stay real in front of artificial intelligence. First, I would go more often to the mountains. We get so caught up in the details of everyday work that we often forget to disconnect. We forget to hike up the mountain and get perspective and get a high-level view of what's happening in our lives. Second, I would play with Lego bricks more often. It's funny how many of the day-to-day problems boil down to simply picking up the right components and using our imagination to put them together into something that makes sense. And third, whatever you choose to do in life, business, school, whatever, don't just do things because you have to do them. Always put things in perspective and question yourself, why am I doing the things I'm doing? And those are 3 examples. But generally, don't just use AI because everybody else in this room uses it. Use AI because it serves a higher purpose. Because in the end, staying real isn't about not using AI. It's about remembering that we are still the architects. We choose the pieces, we decide what's real, and we give meaning to those lights in the distance on a dark mountain. And this is how we stay real in a world of deepfakes. Thank you.